So now we're going to talk about how you keep on track and don't get caught up in chasing the bright, shiny butterflies, which even I have had happen to me since I've been putting this program together. So step 5 is how to keep on track. And as I said at the very beginning, the secret sauce of this entire module is really about knowing in advance that you need to start with an organized mind and have simple systems that assist you. So the sorts of systems we're talking about here are how you store your content, how you find your content, and how you then utilize it later. One of my favorite quotes said by James Clear is, "We don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems." And for me, that's paramount when it comes to building a strategy and creating consistency. And both strategy and consistency is made simple with systems. And this is where your content and your content repurposing comes into play. So one of the first major keys that you need to keep in mind to stay on track is to stick to your big words and your key topics. So what I mean by that is there'll be a big word that is your word, and this is something to consider if you haven't actually discovered these elements yet. This is very paramount for your homework, and you'll see more as we go through. So you need to know what your big word is and what your key topics are. As an example, my big word is growth, but my key topics are systems, events, content, obviously content repurposing and content creation, as well as LinkedIn and networking. All of those topics fit under the big word of growth. And when you have that big word and those major key topics that you want to be supporting your community with, that you know that your community want and need, it makes it easier for you to have that organized mind. And then you need to prioritize the content that you're repurposing and the stuff that you're finding based on those keywords and key topics, because they're keywords and key topics that your audience are looking for and searching for, which is where and why you'll be able to increase your profits when you've got the right key topics and you stick to them and don't run out of your lane, and you've got that big overarching word of the theme of what it is that you do. And this is all based on what you are selling or what you are wanting to sell in the next quarter, in the next 6 months, in the next 12 months. So one of the simplest ways I've found to organize my thinking and keep me on track is to set up both a paper version as well as an online version that looks like this on the screen. So I have folders in Google Drive, so G Drive, and in some cases I do have them in Dropbox, mainly for the visual side of things. But I start with my big word, which, as I mentioned, is growth. I create a folder that has that's titled that big word, and then I have other folders within this folder that are my key topics. And we usually have somewhere between 1 and 5 key topics. Any more than that and you're probably getting a bit fragmented. Now the key for where you are right now, starting this process, is to have a dump and run file. So this is a file where you put stuff that you find that you're not quite sure whether it is or isn't a fit for one of your key topics. So you dump it in there, you find it and dump it in there, and then eventually it'll get sorted into there because it then becomes a priority. So most of what you'll be doing in this starting process, as we're only at module 1, is setting up this simple system in Google Drive or Dropbox, whichever is your preference, as well as a paper version. I'll show you that in a minute. But the big thing that you'll be doing is just dumping files into here from a speed and efficiency perspective that you'll then sort into these major key topics once you've prioritized them. Now, the next offshooting folders that I have for each and every of these topics is this process here. So when you've got a prioritized key topic, you then have another folder where you have the ideas, the drafts, and then the completed. So usually the process for me is it goes into dump and run. I go, yes, that's absolutely a key element for that topic, and I pop it in the ideas section. When the idea has germinated or grown a little bit, it goes into draft, and then it goes into completed. So they just sort of tend to move through those as you complete them. When you then have completed, within the completed folder, I then have the social media graphics, posts and tiles that would support it. I also have the long form content file, as well as any photos. See how clever I am? I've got a spelling mistake there, but that's okay. You've got images and photos there as well. So that's how I then store it. So if I'm looking for an article, say somebody rings me and says, hey, have you got a video, or hey, have you got an article on networking? I can go to my networking topic, I can go into my completed folder, and I can go into my long form or social media or images or photos or videos, and I can find something quickly to support what somebody's asking me for. So that is the system, the simple system that you set up using files in your Google Drive or your Dropbox, and it's mapped out exactly as you see it on the screen. Now I will come to the paper version in a minute to show you, and that is mapped out exactly the same way. But in the meantime, the easiest way for you to search for things on your computer is to compile a list of those keywords, those key topics, and whilst you've created that dump and run folder, you can just simply search in your search bars, whether you've got a Mac or a PC, you can search for keywords that will help you find that content that you can then pop into your dump and run file. So it's all about using your keywords and your searching terms in your search bar, not actually looking for specific files as such, but looking for files that contain the keywords. That will give you a much faster approach to sorting and finding your content. So let me repeat that. Use the search terms and the search boxes for keywords or phrases that you'll find within the content. Don't necessarily try to search for content that you remember that you created but you can't find it. Trust me, that you will go down the rabbit warren and it will take ages. So search for growth or networking and see what files and documents etc. come up, and then pop them into the dump and run folder that you've created. So this, as I said, is all about finding and organizing your content without driving yourself crazy. And I'm the queen of driving myself crazy, so I'm hoping you can learn from my mistakes. So as I said, the fastest way on your computer is to not look for specific pieces. It's all about the keywords and using those keywords to search within your files, etc., on your computer specifically. So that's how you go about finding the key content that you want that'll end up in your topic folders. So this is a before and after version of how I start sorting content when I've got lots of paper-based content, and I tend to be a printer, so I tend to print things off and keep things. So I'm very much a paper-driven person, probably a little bit more so than I am an online version. So it's nice to be able to adapt between the two and be agile across both forms. Now, the folders that are all of the bright colors that are lined up beautifully is exactly how I'd love my filing system to actually remain and continue as. That's how it starts, and they're just small A4 paper folders just on a stand. And as you can see there, I've started with the big word, which is literally is the brain dump folder that we mapped out in the digital version. As I said, my big word is growth, so I start by putting everything that I find in a paper version into this blue folder. And then as I work out what is the topic title of it, is it a networking piece of content? Is it a LinkedIn piece of content? Is it a content piece of content? Is it a piece of content about events, or is it a piece of content about systems? And then they get filed into these folders accordingly to their topic. So this is your big brain dump, your big word folder. And then the ones after it, the yellow, the green, the orange, the purple and the pink are the key topics. Now, as you will see, it doesn't remain like that for long because you will end up with so much content. So what I would suggest, instead of starting with an A4 version, like I tried to, and as part of the demonstration wanted to be able to show you, particularly if you're a paper-driven person, it's probably going to serve you better if you get the A3 plastic folders. So this is what I mean. These are the plastic folders here. They're an A3, so they're very, very large. They've actually got some width and some depth to them, which means you can pack a lot into it. So here you can see I've got a blue A3 folder. There's also a yellow one there, and then I've got a bigger version there because I've got a calendar that I was mapping out some stuff on because I'm a prolific writer. Let me just go back one, sorry. So here, this folder here is the growth, is just growth in general, hence it being a much bigger one. You can see I've got a LinkedIn folder there. That is one of these smaller versions. Then there's the folder that's got networking in it. Then I've got a notepad there, which I write stuff as it relates to that networking one in. And then this super huge one here, this super blue one, is all of the stuff that I was mapping out when I was creating the Content Repurposing Academy with all of the different modules in it. So that's how I start and store my content in a paper version in folders. It really does start with A4, but trust me, you'll end up in A3 because you'll end up with so much content and you'll surprise yourself, especially for myself, as I'm really not a writer. I'm very much more of a speaker who does a little bit of writing. So you will end up with lots. So I do suggest getting the A3 versions instead. And it does get messy, but within that mess, there is some organized chaos. And as long as you've got some form of organized chaos, that is a huge tick and a big win, because that's exactly what we want to be having, is some form of organized chaos and then some form of system that helps us keep our content and topic elements in an easy to find solution. So just going back to that again, that's how I map out both the folders that you've just seen in the A3 and A4 versions, and this is also how I map out the digital folders on either Dropbox or Google Drive, whichever is your preference. Work with what you're used to working with, but just build a system around how you're going to sort your content and store your content, and how you're going to prioritize the brain dump content as you go through the Content Repurposing Academy with me. So what I'd love to know is, what did you end up with? I'd love for you to post it in the Facebook group, just describing some of the golden opportunities that you've found, and also sharing with the group where you actually found them. An example of mine, there's a number of examples off USBs. So I found some old USBs that had folders in them that were just called printing. And within those printing folders, for example, on those USBs, I found some templates of past courses that I'd created, or workbooks and worksheets. I also found a whole range of how-to templates that I'd printed off that somebody else had given me, but I then tweaked them and changed them, and I'd already adapted them into my business. And it wasn't until I'd seen the how-to templates that I had that oh my God moment. I actually implemented that into my business, and this is what it now looks like. So that enabled me to take that printed folder and grab the gold that was in that printed folder and turn it into products, productization, or elements that I could repackage into products like simple how-to templates. So love to know what you've got. Please post it in the Facebook group. I know you're going to have so many opportunities when you start going through the finding process and the sorting process. So please do share that within the Facebook group.